Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Um, so Marcos, we kind of heard a little bit of a background on the EDC and the situation with the EDC and the space here that you have, the theater space, and how there's a lease issue. And we wanted to know if you could clearly explain the issue you are currently facing with the EDC, threatening to take away your multicultural space.
Um, yeah, it's become very complicated. What originally happened is EDC came in and informed us that they wanted to convert the room, multicultural space that we rent from EDC, together with the theater, which is upstairs, and combine them into one space and to have someone manage those two spaces. Someone who would create income. Their idea was that the city wasn't making enough money from these spaces, and so that's basically what's happened. Ever since then, we've met the requirements of completing the RFEI, which is a request for individual intent, no, RFPI, a request for personal intent. And we've met with the parties from EDC, Economic Development Corporation, and we have also, after that, there's been like two more question-based documents that they supplied. We answered both of them with further questionings. It's a precarious situation because, first of all, this building at the onset was supposed to be under the Department of Cultural Affairs. This is a cultural organization, a cultural group, and the Department of Cultural Affairs did not want it because it was a rental issue. So then it was passed over to EDC, which is basically a rental. It's a landlord organization, basically. So they have parcels throughout the city and they manage them. So they're not interested in culture. They're interested in rentals. So we become a renter, basically. So the cultural center, in a sense, cultural center in name, but it's not really a cultural center because everyone here basically rents space from the city to do their own programs. So there's not one specific cultural, per se, philosophy, a cultural a cultural agenda. Each organization has their own personal, their own individual programs. We are basically a visual arts organization, providing exhibitions primarily, but we also have the multicultural spaces was being questioned right now. And that space we have theater, we have music, we have dance, we have poetry, and also exhibitions. So it gets used it gets used by the community also for community events, parties, weddings, conferences, political, health issues, whatever. Yeah. So, well, we run the space because we rent it, basically. It's not because Department of Cultural Affairs is allowing us to use it. They're not putting any money into it. We raise our own funds and we pay for the space. Another thing that has happened is they've never been generous enough to get anybody in the building a long-term lease. So everybody's like on a month-to-month or lease. So it's basically a tenant's landlord issue, in a sense, disguised as the cultural issue. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we're at right now. I mean, it's a matter of meeting all their demands. They're going to select one of four groups that have submitted the RFEI, and that's it. That's where it's at right now.
Do you think that the fact that it is a renter-occupant issue and not a cultural issue hinders your ability to apply your cultural philosophy to Taya Boricua? And
Sure.
does it hinder you in any way? What
Yes.
way specifically?
Well, in one specific way is if you're going for funding, the funding agencies, you know, want to see an organization that's stable. Of course, if we're on a month-to-month, you know, it's not a stable situation. If we had a long-term lease, it would be a stable. So that right away limits the funding raising capabilities of the organization. Another thing that happens is that which is happening now is our inability to program past a certain amount of months. You know, so we're basically like programming from month to month in a way, or every 3 months or so. So exhibitions or activities that we want to have like 6 months down the road, they become haphazard. You know, it could become something that it's not feasible. It might not be feasible. You know, so we expressed that to EDC, and and we asked them to give us a timeline, and they won't give us a timeline. They're looking at all these proposals, and basically I feel like what they're doing is like they're picking our brains. They're just like going along with getting the answers from here to there, how to run the space, and then eventually they'll give it to someone who in their eyes is going to be able to generate funds for the city. They're not interested in culture. They're not interested in the arts. They're interested in an organization that's going to generate funds for the city. Right? So that's where it's at.
So when they choose, so you're kind of saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the organization that will come in is not going to be an organization about culture or anything like that. It's just going to be about how do we fund the city. It's going to be that type of organization.
Yeah.
So how's it going to affect El Barrio as a whole? How do you think that will affect the community?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, like looking at it in perspective, this is how it's going to affect. It's going to this is my interpretation, right? I mean, they're going to be there for 2 years. 2 years they're going to be moved out. The city's going to take the building back. The gentrification is already in our doorsteps. You know, it's like a wave, you know? And this building in the long run is a gem. You know what I mean? When nobody wanted it and we developed it as a cultural center, it was years ago, but now the community has changed. You know, right across the street there were 3 empty lots. Now it's a beautiful building, you know, which no one can afford here right now. You know? And the same thing is happening all throughout the community and all the communities in New York City. You know, it happened in the Lower East Side, it happened in the West, it's happening in West Harlem, and it's happening in East Harlem. So, you know, so the whole thing is like a smoke stream, and little by little they're going to take the building back. The city's going to take it back. That's what's going to happen. You know, that's my take on it. You know.
I agree with your take.